Hi, in this tutorial we will study integrity constraints. Integrity constraints are rules that will force on every valid relation to maintain their integrity. We have four types of integrity constraints. Domain. Domain is the type, like when we specify that, for example, GPA is a number, then that means we cannot assign that on a string. So we're putting a constraint that we call domain, the type of data that we expect for that attribute. Primary key and foreign key. So primary key, there are rules that has to meet about the definition of being a key. The same for foreign key. And we got the general constraints. And we say when we were studying, for example, the ER model, there were constraints, like in one example we say, for example, a nurse can take care of 5 to 10 patients, for example. So that will be what we could call a general constraint, and we will see an example soon. So the constraints, like we say, there will be types, the values on the individual attributes. That's what we have. We have also the not null that says that this we specify that we have to provide a valid value for this. Unique is a way of defining like candidate keys. Remember that a table can have multiple candidate keys, and one of the candidate keys is the one that is going to be selected as primary key. So how we want to enforce the others to be unique? And that's we have the, the constraint on unique primary key. References is the one that we use when we define foreign keys that says this attribute if that it has a value, has to match a value in another table. And check is the one that uh, will be very interesting. Now we want to show that in the example to check that what we use for the general constraints. Example number one, and this is the one that I want you to test in Oracle today. So what I want you is that you either copy and paste it and create a table, or you just type it. So this is the table graduates. Now let's see, Social Security. This is the domain constraint or the type constraint that says has to be a char 9. And then here we got another constraint that says it's not null and it's also a primary key. So name here, another constraint, which is the type here, varchar. This is another domain constraint, address. Now degrees is the one that it shows us what we call a general constraint. So here we got a degree, and look that the degree has a specification that the degree, the valid values for degree are bachelor, master's, and PhD, and that will be the right spelling. That means if they try to enter something else, it's not valid. I think in one of the examples that we did in the ER, we got the possible values for the domain, and then I said, oh, we can specify those on tables. So GPA here, we got another domain here, the type, and then the not null. Unique, that means name and address will be together a candidate key. This candidate key wasn't selected to be the primary key. So that means this table has two candidate keys, name and address, and the other candidate key, Social Security. Now look at the constraints can also have a name, I'm sorry. Like in this case, we're creating a constraint and we call it IC12. It's like, for example, like you're creating your own code, and then when somebody wants to insert something invalid, it should display that check that. So for example here, GPA greater for students, when we insert that in graduate students, they should have a GPA that is greater or equal to 2.0. If they still don't have a degree, but if they have a degree which is equals to bachelor's, or the GPA greater than 3.0. So this is an interesting constraint. And what I want you to do next, first I want you to create table graduates in Oracle. Then I want you to insert this valid tuple that should be okay with the constraints and see what happens. And then I want you to try to insert something that is invalid, and I want you to see that message. Now, something else that you can practice, but I don't need to see that in your screenshots, that we can also disable or enable a constraint. Constraints are created and enabled, but you can disable by doing the following: alter table graduates and then disable the constraint. and then you want to enable that again, this is the way that you do it. There is a second example that you don't need to test and actually won't work because has a foreign key. So to be able this to work, you need the other table created. So this is table books. So here is the first attribute. Here is the domain, not null, primary key, and I don't think we need this when we got primary key, right? So title is a candidate key because it says unique. Then price has a general constraint here that it has to be a non-negative number greater than 0, which makes sense. And then um, again, price cannot be 0 either. Addition, that means if we leave that blank, should be addition by 1, and then check also that addition is a positive number. That's another general constraint. Now, publisher name is a bar chart, and then it is a foreign key. That's a way of making a reference. So this is references publisher. So this will give us an error if this table doesn't exist. So to be able to create this, if you want to practice this, you have to create table publisher first. And it says that on table publisher, there is an attribute name, and that's the one that should match that. Okay, thank you.